Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Roast Jeffrey, and subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. The transfer portal in college basketball is still churning. It is moving along. I've done 2 big update videos on the transfer portal, but now we've got another big transfer with Brandon Murray, the former Georgetown and LSU guard. He's transferring to the Ole Miss Rebels. This is huge for Chris Beard, because Chris Beard is now the new head coach of Ole Miss basketball. And I thought at the time it was a splash hire for Ole Miss. As long as nothing bad happens to Chris Beard, if he doesn't get in trouble again, then this should be a great hire for Ole Miss, and you're already seeing the fruits of his labor. Bringing in a player like Brandon Murray from Georgetown is a huge addition for the Ole Miss program, because you look at Ole Miss, they've been devoid of talent in basketball in the SEC for a long time, and how can you compete against the Kentuckys, the Tennessees, the Auburns, now the Alabamas, and the other teams in the SEC that are playing at a high level that have much better talent and so many players that can get a bucket when needed? And Ole Miss hasn't had that. You look at someone like Devontae Shuler a couple years ago. He was a solid player under Kermit Davis, and they've had some other solid players overall, but some of the better players Ole Miss has had recently have entered the transfer portal, not come to the Ole Miss Rebels. They haven't been able to bring players in of a high caliber. They did bring in Jaemyn Brakefield a couple years ago from the Duke Blue Devils. That was a huge addition for Kermit Davis, and he entered the transfer portal this offseason, but Chris Beard was able to keep Jaemyn Brakefield. That is huge for Ole Miss to be able to try to build a contender in the SEC. They're also returning Matthew Murrell. He's a solid player overall as well. I think looking at Ole Miss's roster, they need a lot more talent. They need more players that are going to be able to get a bucket. They're going to need more players that are going to be able to compete with the top teams in the SEC night in and night out to have a chance to be able to get Ole Miss basketball toward the top of the SEC. They've been one of the bottom 3 or 4 SEC teams for years, and Ole Miss is a place that is capable of winning. You look at the football team. They're having a lot of success with Lane Kiffin, and the Ole Miss athletic director seems to be putting a lot of money into their sports, and now you've got Chris Beard. Even though the circumstances, him leaving at Texas, you never would have got him at Ole Miss otherwise, but Chris Beard wouldn't have taken the Ole Miss job if Ole Miss wasn't actually trying to commit to being successful in basketball. And now you see a transfer like Brandon Murray come in from Georgetown for Chris Beard, and I don't think this means Ole Miss is done. You look at Chris Beard. Now that you've got Brandon Murray, he could actually start bringing in some more quality transfers to be able to pair with Jaemyn Brakefield, Matthew Murrell, and now Brandon Murray to maybe be able to build a team with Ole Miss in year 1 to potentially make the NCAA tournament right off the bat for Chris Beard. I don't think that Brandon Murray and the players that Ole Miss has right now is going to be enough for Ole Miss to be a top team in the SEC, but an NCAA tournament team is definitely possible. But what does Brandon Murray bring besides the name recognition and the fact that he could potentially bring along some more transfers in as well now that you got Brandon Murray, and it will inspire more players to think that something good is building in Oxford with now Chris Beard at head coach? Brandon Murray is just a fantastic player. He's a 6'5", 225-pound wing. He's a guard/forward. He can guard 2 through 4. He's a great player overall. Can he handle the basketball like a point guard? No. But he is a guy that can take the ball and drive into the hoop, lay it in, and even do some explosive dunks. He's also a capable three-point shooter. He shot 31% from 3 with the Georgetown Hoyas this past season, and the year before that he shot 33% with the LSU Tigers. So he is a player that is capable of shooting threes. He's not the greatest three-point shooter in the world, and that is something he's going to have to work at in college if he does want to be a player that could potentially go to the next level into the NBA. But he's got the physical tools to be able to go pro. He's a great player at 6'5", 225 pounds. He's a body that not a lot of players can stop once he's going down into the lane trying to get a layup or a dunk, and he is good at drawing fouls, and he is a capable free throw shooter. But overall, Brandon Murray is a guy that does need to work with his three-point shot. And I think if Chris Beard can do that, he could be a really dangerous player for Ole Miss overall. But the one negative against Brandon Murray is that this is his 3rd team that he's transferring to. He was at LSU as a freshman, then he went to Georgetown, and now he's going to Ole Miss. That is not a good sign. You never want to see a player transfer that many times. But in this new age of the transfer portal, it's not as uncommon as one might think. You look at someone like Fardal Zamak, he's transferred to 4 different teams. JT Daniels in football to 4 different teams as well. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. And if Chris Beard can develop Brandon Murray and make him an even better basketball player, he might not be staying at Ole Miss long. He could be a one and done for Ole Miss in the fact that he's now a junior and he'll be only at Ole Miss for 1 year and he could go pro. But if he is a guy that does give Ole Miss 2 or 3 years of service in college basketball, that would be huge for the program. But overall, I think this is a big addition for Ole Miss. I think that Brandon Murray's a guy that could do some great things. He averaged 13 points per game, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists for Georgetown this past season. And if he can replicate that success at Ole Miss, then I think that the Rebels will be a much better basketball team this next season. And overall, looking at Brandon Murray, he's not transferring from a smaller program to a bigger program. Yes, Georgetown's really struggling. He was a focal point of the offense. Georgetown's still in the Big East going up against teams like Villanova, Providence, Marquette, and Xavier. And you also had UConn as well, who just won the national title. So I think that Brandon Murray's definitely an experienced guard from a Power 6 program in Georgetown. Yes, he was more of a focal point of the offense at Georgetown. Maybe he'll have to take a backseat just a hair at Ole Miss because he's going to have other players around him that are really talented, like Jaemyn Brakefield and Matthew Murrell and whoever else Chris Beard can get through the portal. But I think this is a huge addition for Ole Miss. You're bringing in a really talented player, Brandon Murray, who has a lot of upside, who has the potential to be an NBA player. I think that Chris Beard is building something in Ole Miss. Do I think he's going to be able to win the SEC in year one? No. Do I think that Ole Miss might miss the tournament in year one? I think that's very possible. I don't think it's a guarantee they'll make the tournament, but Ole Miss is definitely going to be a much better basketball team next season because you're bringing in Brandon Murray, you've got Jaemyn Brakefield back, and you could get some more players in the transfer portal. I think more players are going to want to go to Ole Miss because of Chris Beard and what he is building right now in Oxford with Ole Miss and the Rebels. I think this is a really good sign for the Ole Miss program. Brandon Murray is a really good player that should help Ole Miss out a lot, and I think this is a huge addition for the Rebels next season, and Chris Beard is starting to do some special things with the Ole Miss Rebels. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content, like this video down below, comment down below what you think about Brandon Murray transferring from Georgetown to Ole Miss, and whether you think Brandon Murray will be able to help improve the Ole Miss basketball team, and whether you think Chris Beard is building something to potentially be a tournament team for Ole Miss in year one. Follow me on Twitter as well, link is in the description, and I will see you next time.